we might be actually the tallest two guys in the room here. Well, Alex, thank you so much for joining us. I think it's your second time visiting Korea through Worldcoin. Last year, you were visiting with your co-founder, Sam, and it was a huge splash in Korea, and the community was quite excited to see Worldcoin's these initiatives happening in Korea now. Maybe to start, tell us a bit more about, what is Worldcoin? What are you guys excited about?
Well, Worldcoin, we started working on it 4.5 years ago, roughly, and Sam started the company back then, and the initial motivation was really that he believed that AI will continuously make progress over the coming years and decades, and it will create all of those amazing things, progress in science, technology, but also it will require a lot of change and a lot of new infrastructure. And so the founding of the company is actually called Tools for Humanity. So that's what I'm CEO of, and Worldcoin is the project of that. And so the thinking behind it was, what kind of global infrastructure will we need to react to the change that AI will bring? And one of the first problems that came to mind back then was that we thought, well, we will have real-time video generation. We will have very, very smart AI systems that can interact with us online, and the whole internet will shift around that change. Because if you really think about it, I think ChatGPT was a very, of course, huge technical accomplishment, but maybe even more importantly, it was the passing of the Turing test the first time, which is actually very profound and something computer scientists have been talking about for a long time. And so with that change, we believed that we will need a way to verify humanness reliably on the services that we care about in a way that is actually anonymous and not reliable on government infrastructure, because that will not work globally and it will have all of negative side effects, or potentially have. And so we spend a lot of time and a lot of effort to build such a system that can be rolled out globally and we can use and rely on to verify humanness on the services we care about. And that is World ID. And to actually launch such a system, you needed to get it to scale, because none of these systems really matter if they're rolled out at a very small scale. And for that reason, back then, we talked to many of the early PayPal people, and you might remember that, some of you might remember that PayPal launched in the early days by giving out these $20 emails that you could send to your friends, and they spent a large amount of their venture funding on that kind of growth initiative. And so we were thinking, well, if we find a technological solution to the proof of personal problem, and we are able to launch a digital currency by giving ownership in it to eventually maybe every human on the planet, but at least at the start, tens of millions or hundreds of millions humans, we could use that as a kind of bootstrapping mechanism to get the network to scale and to really get it going. So basically just replicate what PayPal did at a much, much larger scale, and that is what we did. We launched last July, and as many of you might remember, I think in the early days, the reactions were somewhat skeptical and painful, but I think now the understanding of what AI is already doing and will be doing, I think, hopefully change that perspective.
Awesome. We were both based in San Francisco, and I was lucky enough, a few years back, about 3 years ago, I was able to try the first orb. And as a previously robotics engineer myself, thought, wow, there's a blockchain project that's actually building hardware side of the business as well. And the identity piece on blockchain, or even internet generally at bigger scale, is one of the biggest challenge. Today we use passwords or a different type of authentication verification to prove that who I am to access internet. But that's still not really direct one-to-one connection, and it's even harder problem in a decentralized network like blockchain to have that on-chain identity to be connected to my identity. And when I saw the orb for the first time, as an engineer myself, I thought it's one of the most brute force way to solve that connection to happen. And it's very simple, but also makes sense, and it works. And one of the question I had was like, how did this actually scale? With this org, and you guys are targeting to be everywhere in the world, globally, every continent, and you guys have been spending a lot of resources, here in Asia, and across Africa and other parts of the world. Could you tell us a bit more about how you guys have been scaling this, and some of the numbers around what size you guys are at today?
Yeah. I think I will give a practical answer to how we did it in the past, but then I will also talk about how I think this will scale way further. So I think in the past, so first of all, we are now at, I think, 12 million users, roughly around 6 million that verified with an actual orb, but that really distributed around every continent and every major region, and that was actually the goal. The goal is to roll it out globally, and so it's we're here in Asia, Latin America, Europe, and Africa. So really try to cover the world. And in the past, what we did is we just hired and worked with a lot of people that scaled such things in the past. So Uber, Airbnb, DoorDash, these kinds of people that ran global operations before. But what is interesting is, like, if you actually do the math, it's not that much scale in terms of hardware devices, because I think at scale we will need around 50,000 devices live to basically have full global coverage. That is, for hardware devices, not that much. It will still cost billions of dollars to roll out, but we are very committed to make that happen because we think the outcome is very, very important, and we will achieve the mission. But in the mid to long term, I think what will make this go hyper scale is kind of true decentralization, even of the hardware stack. So what you will see relatively soon is you will see other manufacturers and other operating companies that will have that as a profitable business model to manufacture and roll out. And I think that should potentiate the scaling quite drastically.
At this scale now, I'm sure there are a lot of unexpected use cases or interesting creative use cases that Worldcoin ecosystem has been participating. Anything you could highlight for us?
One of the most interesting places, I think, for a lot of reasons, and for crypto as a whole, is probably Argentina, because I think in Argentina you have a very specific economic situation. Like, you had hyperinflation. Now, thankfully, Milei was able to reduce the inflation numbers. But in any case, you have strong inflation, but you have a working democracy, and you have a very progressive government. And because of that, you have very high crypto adoption. And it's among the highest in the world. And so we went super viral earlier this year. So I think there's now 2-point-something million users in Argentina. And more specifically in Buenos Aires, over 50% of people that are somewhere between 18 or 69 have a World app.
Wow, I actually didn't know that.
So basically, everyone has a World app that is like not completely out of tech. And so that led to a lot of interesting things, like now people actually starting it for payments, because you also have the QR API in Argentina that is open, but also a lot of actually just fun things that were very surprising. So for example, in the last 2 weeks, we had a website go viral that was I am a human, and they just voted on the most random things. So like a soccer player that had his last game, where should the soccer player play these games, and they had 40,000 votes a day. So you see a lot of these like unexpected things happening at that scale.
That's amazing. And you guys have been putting a lot of efforts in Asia as well, and especially in Korea. What are some of the initiatives you guys are doing here, and what are you looking forward to in the near future?
So we just signed an MOU with the Malaysian government, and I think that was the biggest one. So we will actually roll out the infrastructure together with the government. And I think other than that, that's why I'm here, I think South Korea, both South Korea and Japan are two of the most interesting markets for crypto as a whole. And so I think we're still early, we're hiring here, trying to build out a team. But I think the next big push will be, of course, scaling Malaysia, but then also scaling South Korea and Japan.
Anyway, so I think today when I was walking around conference, I also met a lot of developers and founders. What are the best ways for these builders to participate in Worldcoin ecosystem today?
We actually have a lot of really exciting things launching in the next coming weeks that will essentially surface the large user base to developers. So you can actually launch applications to that user base. And I think that will be somewhat unprecedented because there's not that many things in crypto that have that much scale. So I think that's something to look out for. We are launching our own L2 world chain that it allows free gas for all users that actually are verified. But again, much more importantly, I think for developers, it exposes you to a large user base. And then, of course, I think World ID at its core will turn out to be increasingly more useful as it scales. But thinking about early use cases is always a good idea.
Earlier in the panel, you mentioned a bit about history of Worldcoin on how it started with Sam Altman and you, while Sam Altman is also working on OpenAI. What are some of the visions that aligned with like AI initiative and also with the Worldcoin? As a blockchain investor myself, based in San Francisco, obviously we run into a lot of AI founders and friends, and I actually noticed that the ultimate long-term vision of what future we want from the AI community, the method is different, but it's actually very similar to what decentralized network founders are looking for. How do you see that vision coming together where blockchain and AI are one of the two of the biggest topics we have today in the tech industry?
I think fundamentally AI is a strong force of centralization, and I think blockchains are a strong force of decentralization. And that's in a much more meaningful way than just the technical statement. I think the same will apply to the social implications. The same will apply to the governance implications of such technology. So I think in its extreme, I think both technologies are very synergetic. I think, to be honest, a lot of the things that people talk about in terms of crypto and AI, I never really get. Many of them don't make that much sense. I think like you shouldn't try to force that, but rather see AI as the future we are all heading into. And I think it's a little bit like the internet. I think it will be very ubiquitous. It will be everywhere, and I think it will influence the products we build in crypto, and it should. But I think artificially forcing things is not a good idea.
Awesome. As we wrap up the Fireside chat, what are some of the exciting future milestones of Worldcoin or Worldchain, World ID ecosystem that people should be looking out for?
Well, I think watch out for a big announcement coming in the coming weeks. It will be the biggest one so far by quite a large margin. And other than that, I think for us it's now all about scaling and rollout. So I'm flying around the world constantly, meeting with governments and developers and builders, and it's all about getting that number from 10 million to 100 million, which I think we will be able to do.
That's awesome. To close, why are you excited about Korean market, Korean community here? Why your team? I think you guys are scaling the team base in Korea as well. Right. Could you share a bit more about that?
Yeah, I think Korea is one of the, if not even the technology hub of Asia. So I think it's like a very, very important market by itself. I think the government is very forward-leaning, and which is also not always a given, especially in our industry. And there's a lot of actually already crypto users here that understand these products. And so from all three sides, users, government, and overall adoption, I think Korea is very, very important.
Awesome. As an early investor in Worldcoin myself, I'm very excited to see more and more of an initiative by Worldcoin in Korea. Thank you so much, Alex, for joining me in KBW. Thank you, everyone, for joining our Fireside Chat.
Thank you for having me.